I want to update you on a story that we've been following since the moment Donald Trump won the election. It's a story that's not being covered, but it's a story that we think is important, not only for our time, but for all time. The end of the Democratic Party as we've known it is happening. The party of FDR and JFK has become a party of radicals and extremists. And we know this is happening because that's what they call anyone who supports Donald Trump. And as a result of that, Democrats are now committing political suicide on a weekly basis. And when people say Donald Trump has broken the Democratic Party, that's no longer hyperbole. He has. Donald Trump has broken the party to the point where U.S. senators and members of Congress are flying to Central America to meet with a man who is an illegal alien, a criminal, an MS-13 gang member, and a legal citizen of El Salvador. We also know that he beat up his wife to the point where she took out a restraining order against him in 2022. But Democrats want that man back in the United States with the rest of us, because according to Democrats, in their infinite insanity, Kilmar Abrego Garcia has been denied his constitutional rights.
Can you say with absolute certainty that he is not, nor has he ever been, a member of the MS-13 gang? And did you ask him point blank?
Well, Dana, what Donald Trump is trying to do here is change the subject. His argument is you can't fight that and at the same time uphold people's constitutional rights. That's a very dangerous view. And if we deny the constitutional rights of this one man, it threatens the constitutional rights of everybody in America.
So according to United States Senator Chris Van Hollen, if we deny the constitutional rights of one man, it threatens the rights of everyone else in America. You got to take me to that, Chris. I'm not seeing it. I'm not with you. It does not. Because Kilmar Abrego Garcia is not a U.S. citizen, and it is that simple. But that is a fact that Democrats and the media continue to just pretend isn't relevant. And we know this because they are all saying the exact same thing about that poor Maryland father.
The Trump administration faces a deadline to return a Maryland man that a federal judge says was illegally deported to El Salvador.
The Maryland man.
The Maryland father who was deported to El Salvador's mega prison.
Who was wrongfully deported from Maryland to El Salvador.
One of the people detained at Seacoast Prison is Kilmar Abrego Garcia, Maryland father who was mistakenly deported by the Trump administration.
Ah, yes, that poor wife-beating MS-13 gang member, illegal alien father from Maryland who also happens to be from El Salvador. They left all that out. Donald Trump has just completely broken all of these people to the point where they are now saying and doing anything to convince people that Donald Trump is evil, which is just political suicide. And Democrats, as a result of that, are about to disappear.
With Donald Trump as a dictator seeking to silence dissenting voices, this could happen to any of us. Or you could suddenly be disappeared. You could be disappeared for suffering a miscarriage. You could be disappeared for reading a banned book. You could be disappeared for practicing diversity, equity, and inclusion. You could be disappeared for co-authoring an op-ed.
So to recap, Donald Trump deports somebody from another country here illegally, and now, according to that logic right there, Donald Trump is also going to start deporting people for reading books or having a miscarriage. That makes absolutely no sense. That is insanity. The Wall Street Journal writing that questioning Joe Biden's capacities was taboo a year ago, but now it's everywhere, which is just not accurate at all, Wall Street Journal. We could all see that something was clearly wrong with Joe Biden, but it was only taboo to talk about because the legacy media made it taboo to talk about, which is the actual real story here that no one is discussing. And everyone talking about Joe Biden now wasn't talking about Joe Biden back when it mattered, just like they weren't talking about vaccines or vaccine mandates or vaccine injury or masks or lockdowns or Ukraine or gas prices or inflation when any of that mattered. And they didn't do that because that would have hurt Joe Biden. And that would have hurt Democrats. And the media didn't want Donald Trump back in the White House, but that's exactly what they got. The Journal writing that Joe Biden's State of the Union address in March reassured jittery Democrats after the president read his speech without problems and engaged in a few spontaneous exchanges with lawmakers in the audience, but a lot of effort went into stage managing that moment. Whipple reports that director Steven Spielberg coached Joe Biden on his body language before the speech, telling the president what to emphasize and how to pace himself. Did you hear that? Over the summer, before the debate, Steven Spielberg, the most famous director in Hollywood, was brought in to tell Joe Biden where to put his hands. And no one thought that was a problem. And no one spoke up at the time. Are you kidding me? What is this? Saving Private Biden? Indiana Biden in the Temple of Dumb? Jurassic Biden? E.T. and Joey B? Do you know how utterly ridiculous that sounds? That you would bring in a Hollywood director to tell the President of the United States where to put his hands. But that is what Donald Trump has done to all of these people, all of them, including little Lizzie Warren, who says Joey was sharp on his feet.
Do you regret saying that President Biden had a mental acuity? He had a sharpness to him. You said that up until July of last year.
I said what I believe to be true.
And you think he was as sharp as you?
I said I had not seen decline. And I hadn't. He was sharp. He was on his feet. I saw him. Live event. I had meetings with him a couple of times.
Senator, on his feet is not praise. He can speak in sentences is not praise.
All right.
Lizzie, he was sharp. He was sharp on his feet, Lizzie. They had to bring in Steven Spielberg to tell a guy who's been in Washington for 50 years where to put his hands. That's not sharp on your feet. That's the opposite. And did you catch the first part from Lizzie? I said what I believe to be true. There it is. Well, Lizzie, that doesn't mean much either now, does it? Because you also said that you believe that you were an Indian, and you're not.
Look, this is who I grew up believing with my brothers. This is our family story. This is consistent with what I did because it was based on my understanding from my family's stories. But family stories are not the same as tribal citizenship.
Once again, Donald Trump has broken these people, and nobody is discussing this part of the story. He's done it to the point where there is no turning back. The Democratic Party is a failing party. And because of Donald Trump, little Lizzie went from the Native American former Harvard professor, U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, to a national joke.
Pocahontas, Pocahontas. Pocahontas. I mean, Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren, seriously. I will give you $1 million to your favorite charity, paid for by Trump, if you take the test and it shows you're an Indian.
It's important to note I'm not a tribal citizen, and I should have been more mindful of the distinction with tribal citizenship and tribal sovereignty, and that is why I apologize to Chief Baker.
These are not remotely serious people. These are not even good people. They have no morals. They have no character. Broken. Little Lizzie is completely broken. No political future. She is a national punchline in every single state except maybe parts of Massachusetts, and I'm saying maybe. You would also think that NPR, National Public Radio, who is on the verge of losing hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding as a result of decades of biased, anti-conservative coverage, might at least try to appear unbiased over the next couple of weeks. They would at least try to seem down the middle and fair. But they are broken too, to the point where they thought it was a good idea to run a piece yesterday claiming that the White House is looking to replace Pete Hegseth as defense secretary, according to one official. NPR found one anonymous source and ran with the story. NPR, who continues to get $535 million from taxpayers and the federal government every year, which Donald Trump controls. NPR finds one anonymous source and writes that the White House is looking to replace the Secretary of Defense. And that is happening because they can't help themselves. NPR is broken too. And so is their CEO, who somehow still has a job, who still claims that NPR isn't biased.
Is NPR biased?
Congressman, I have never seen any instance of political bias determining editorial decisions. No.
Well, Mr. Berliner, in his story last year, wrote, in the D.C. area, editorial positions at NPR, he said he found 87 registered Democrats, 0 Republicans. 87 to 0, and you're not biased.
I think that is concerning if those numbers are accurate.
What we're seeing right now is not normal, but we have been following this every single day. My team and I have been watching the Democrats and watching the legacy media try to defend these people. And we can promise you that if Republicans were doing the exact same thing, the media would be talking about the end of the modern-day Republican Party. So we are doing the same thing because I believe we are looking at the end of this party, a party that will never, ever return to the mainstream again, to the point where just a few months ago, Democrats ran a candidate who thought that taxpayer-funded sex change surgeries for prison inmates would be popular with the American people. I'm sorry, but if that is your starting point, which it was with Kamala Harris, the end is near.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.